Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Briancrombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. So I think half the world, or maybe even more than half the world, were watching the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on Monday. And I was really moved by a post by Stefan Boyle, who is a marketer, marketing expert in London, England, the UK, that's gone viral. And it's really quite interesting. Stefan, tell us, how viral has your post gone?
Well, it's been quite remarkable, actually, just looking at my latest stats. It's sort of over 1.3 million views now. So it's kind of, blown my mind a little bit, really. It's been unexpected. It's obviously resonated with people, which is, exciting. And it's created lots of, opportunities. It's created lots of messages, new connections, new followers, and a lot of engagement. So that's been, as I say, totally unexpected.
Kind of interesting. And it was kind of moving because, number one, it was led by a picture of one sole individual in full uniform walking down. I presume it's the mall.
It is, yes.
That they were walking down, and then you had a poignant description of this gentleman, his job, and his impact on the UK. Would you mind reading your post? Because I think everyone would really enjoy hearing you personally read the post.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw this guy, I think, on a Twitter post, and it resonated with me. So if I just read my post out and then see what people think. So this man is the Garrison Sergeant Major of London, Andrew Vern Stokes. You probably never heard of him unless you're involved in the military. I hadn't. He typifies the very best of British. He was responsible for organising the military to help deliver the perfect state funeral in front of the world. He achieved it. I'm sure he knew this was a very big deal. I wouldn't have thought he could have foreseen that this reportedly had between 4 and 5.1 billion people who would be watching. At the top end, that's 63% of the global population. The Queen's funeral was the largest single event watched or streamed in history, and it was absolute perfection. Interestingly, it was Queen Elizabeth's coronation was one of the first true international televised events. It was the TV ratings from that event that were used as a benchmark for many years. And now it will be yesterday's event. Can you comprehend the complexity of organising the military precision of what we experienced yesterday? I really can't. And for very little recognition, let's be honest. Watching him march down the mall on his final inspection, the magnitude of what was happening must have hit him. But with all the stoicism that both the Queen and our military personify, he got the job done. Nobody does pomp and pageantry as well as the British, in my obviously slightly biased opinion. Part of me does wish we could apply the same principles to running the country. Nothing woke about yesterday. No trying to please every part of society and often pleasing hardly anyone. No political correctness. Just straight up, this is how we do it, this is what it is. And the world loved it. Apart from Republicans out there who moan constantly about the cost, colonialism, stolen stuff, etc. Quick thought, imagine the cost of advertising our nation to 5.1 billion people in such a magnificent way. Incalculable, I'd have thought, apart from it being huge. There's the ROI dollars, you bang on about how much money we spend on our royals, what they do for the country, etc. But more importantly, thank you, Andrew Vern Stokes. What must have been an immense amount of work. Yes, he's on LinkedIn. You are a true British hero. You did our Queen and the nation proud.
That was fantastic. And tell me, do you know Andrew Vern Stokes? Has he reached out to you? Has he commented at all?
Well, I've tagged him in the post. I'm sure, I mean, even from my post, I'm sure there's many other posts about him, but no, I don't know him. I'd never heard of him before. I found him on social media myself and sort of thought, who is this guy? Did some research and found out who he was and what he did and what he was responsible for. But I hadn't heard of him and don't know him, no. But I'm wondering if he's uses LinkedIn and we'll find it, or be amazed by the amounts of notifications he's got on his profile.
The description that he's got is senior soldier, Garrison Sergeant Major London, defenses ceremonial expert, creator and organizer of national and state ceremonial events, BAFTA winner and double nominee. I wonder, do you know what BAFT is?
No, I don't. No, I don't. Not a clue.
Former trustee, ABF, trusted deliverer. I love that final clause in his resume, trusted deliverer.
Yeah.
And he says he's the designer and deliverer of national ceremonial events and commemorations, cross-government engagement. And I guess he's from Scotland initially.
I think so. Yes.
Really, that was, quite the impressive post. It's an incredible. Why do you think it's had such an incredible response?
I mean, I think firstly, the Queen is, despite some of social media where there is a lot of negativity around, as I said in my post, the cost of the royals, what they earn, maybe the slightly negative news media with Prince Andrew and maybe Prince Harry and Meghan. But I think overall, the Queen particularly did sort of exemplify the best of British. And I think the vast majority, just got to look at the number of people out on the streets, the people queuing to pay their respects for her, and the overwhelming love that we had for the Queen. I think that resonated with a lot of people. And, the way that the funeral was carried out with such precision, I think seeing the person who's probably the unsung hero behind that, I know the Duke of Norfolk had overall responsibility for the whole funeral, but I'm sure there was a huge team that for probably a decade has been planning and preparing for this. But on the actual day, I think watching that man walk down the Mall, right down the centre with that final parade, I'm not a military person. I've never been in the military or have any connection to it, but I respect what those people do for our country, for the uniform, the discipline they have, the organisation, the skills that those people have. And I think for the layman, the person like me and millions of other people just saw that guy do that last minute, whether it was probably had no real impact, but it was just like the final step in his preparation was just to walk that walk. And it was just a sign to every one of those soldiers, male and female, who were all part of the whole structure of that day, to think, right, that's the final check, we're ready. So, I think that gesture, if you like, probably resonated with millions of people, and it did me. That's what really, hit in the heart. Wow. Can you imagine the responsibility? Can you imagine the work that goes on? I think with any event, big or small, there's a responsibility, but doing it on a global stage for the most famous person in the world, and say one of the most loved and respected people in the world, it is immeasurable. I can't comprehend it. I don't know how you would start going about organising that. The thousands and thousands of people for, say, months and years beforehand, is remarkable in my view. And clearly, with how the post went viral with other people as well.
Stefan Boyle, marketer from London, England, the UK. Thank you for that. That's interesting. We're going to take a break for some messages and be back in just 2 minutes with Stefan Boyle. Stay with us, everybody.
No problem.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Stefan Boyle. He is a marketer in London, England, the UK, and he wrote a post about Garrison Sergeant Major of London, Andrew Vern Stokes, the gentleman that was one of the key organizers, if not the key organizers, of the military portion of the Queen's funeral that has gone viral. And you said it's over 1 million views right now?
1.35 million now, and counting. Every second it's going up.
1.35 million. That's unbelievable. Stefan, you're a marketer. Tell us a little bit about you. Your description is lead generation agency for office agents, equity release, funeral planning, debt management. It's quite a long description. Pay per lead agency generating qualified sales leads, no upfront creative costs.
Yep. So what I've been in sales, excuse me, for many years. And I think one of the biggest problems salespeople always have is new, highly qualified leads. So, what I've been involved with for quite some years now is helping solve that problem for people by generating leads and doing it on a results basis. There's lots of people who are, in agencies offering services where you pay huge retainers, and often there's no end result apart from a nice monthly retainer for the agency, whereas the end client hasn't got any highly qualified leads that they're looking for. Whereas what we do, we put that model on its head. We literally charge for results. We agree with clients in specific niches. This is how many leads you want for your business. We agree a price. We deliver those leads. no long-term contract. If you like the leads, want to keep going, you repeat. If you don't, you stop. And it's a win-win really. We deliver results, client get what they're looking for, they know what they're paying up front, and it's an ongoing flow really. So it's just getting away from that unknown issue when people are paying out X amount per month for their agency services and they've no idea what they're going to get. We've kind of made it clearer for our potential, for our clients, what potential revenue they can generate.
And have you been involved in posting something that's gone viral on LinkedIn before?
Oh, and I've had a few that have had quite a lot of engagement and a lot of views, but nothing that's had 1.2 million in the first 12 hours, which every time I refresh my screen, it's like, wow, thousands more people have seen this and commented and liked and shared, and it's been consistent flow. So it's been very interesting experience.
So I'm going to actually just try to share with any of our people that are watching on video a picture of the gentleman that was involved in this event. It was really quite impressive that he could have such an impact. And I'm told that there were 2,000 dignitaries involved in this event. And so there must have been a huge amount of organization of the dignitaries as well. So the 2,000 dignitaries and guests in Westminster Abbey must have been alone a challenge to organize. And I just wonder how they got hotel rooms for them all at last notice, and opportunities to bring them in. And I understand that that Heathrow was closed and there weren't any air flights for the time of the funeral and the time of the procession after the funeral. That numerous, as we saw on TV, highways were completely closed. Did the city just close down?
I think it felt like that. I mean, I watched it at home. I didn't, try and battle the crowds to get into Windsor or to London to see it personally. But it felt like, I think even for the past 10 days, even the media, the TV had been completely obsessed, I guess is one word, completely focused on the funeral, on the Queen, on the royal family. And I guess, look, after 70 years of service, she deserved that. I guess there's also an element. I think since Diana, I've noticed that we do like. There's a fascination with mourning. I think now as well. It's
really a fascination with mourning. I
think so. I mean, I think that the Diana funeral and all the events preceding that, I think, was something I've never seen before in my lifetime. And I think obviously the Queen was expected. Let's be honest. She was elderly, and this has been something that had been waiting for some time. But I guess the media have prepared a huge amount of content for years now in preparation for this event. So she deserved the respect. Don't be wrong. I'm not saying it was a bad thing, but there's been almost a national obsession with these type of events these days. I think. Which to say is not all negative. I think it's good to pay your respects to someone who served for so long in such an incredible fashion. But it's just been everything. And then say it did feel like the world shut down for particularly that day or the day either side of that funeral. Because I guess it was so important. The security, as I say, all those dignitaries in London, I can't even comprehend the security element, never mind just the hotel rooms, but how they police the city, the airports, everything else like that. I guess it had to be an element of just shutting, almost a lockdown for 24 hours just to make sure everywhere was safe. I guess a security breach would have been an absolute disaster in many ways.
Yeah. Well, and as I saw the different processions, whether in London or in Windsor, there was a police person every 5-6 feet.
Yeah, the ones we could see. I do often wonder how many we didn't know about,
right.
Hidden away, mingling amongst the crowds. It must have been an incredible operation. So yeah, it's everyone I think performed an incredible job in terms of the armed services, the military, the transport, hospitality. It was amazing.
According to one report that I read, 5,949 military personnel were deployed throughout the operation. 4,416 from the Army,
Wow.
847 from the Navy, 686 from the Air Force, and 175 from Commonwealth nations. And including that 175, as I was very proud to see, were a couple of Royal Canadian Mounted Police at
They
the
were, yeah.
on horse at the lead of the procession out of the church.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Amazing. I mean, that's the thing that the Queen did have, you know, especially the Commonwealth. She united nations, really, I think. She could do that on a very local level when she visited a school, for example, but also on a national stage, for example, the G7 or, you know, every event she travelled to around the world. I think people came out to see her, and she did bring people together. And I think that's why the outpouring of grief was so immense, because, you know, she touched so many people in her life. You know, you just look at a photo of even the royals now when they come and meet and greet people. The eyeballs, the people, the fascination with them, the people who want to meet them, shake their hands. It's remarkable that, you know, I still think you can look at social media and see a real negative side to so many aspects of life. It can be quite poisonous, but when you get down to ground level and see what someone like the Queen meant to the average person, I think she had an incredible impact. And
Westminster Abbey and the Mall and Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle and the town of Windsor really were shown to the world in incredible splendor. You know, really put your best foot forward with the flags that were lined the mall. It was majestic for Her Majesty, obviously. Queen Victoria statue that they circle, you know, was impressive. And the Abbey, you know, how they could cram that many people in the Abbey was just astounding to me.
It's a big place, actually. The Abbey is surprisingly big. But yeah, as you say, the aerial shots looking down, you know, the coffin and, you know, everyone in there, it was beautiful. So yeah, I think we do that pomp and that pageantry and that tradition extremely well in this country. And that's what frustrates me with the people who just see the royalty as a cost. As you say, you look at those pictures and that went around the world. Everyone was watching that. And I think you couldn't not be impressed by what people saw from that. And can you imagine the tourism over the next decade to come and, you know, people who remember those sites want to come back for themselves, even if they haven't got any plans before. When they've seen that, you think, wow, you know, I mean, I'm going to London this weekend, only for a friend's birthday, but there'll be parts of that funeral that you go, oh, yeah, actually, I just want to go there and see what happened again there. Look, I've been to all those places many times, but you can't help but feel, you know, drawn towards it again. I can only imagine that must happen around the world, and the revenue, the tourism, the business that will be done on the back of that will pay for the family multiple times over every week, I'd imagine. And it's, you know, I also think as well, people worry about the cost. If on that basis you wouldn't do anything in life, you just have a very basic existence. Sometimes you need something to celebrate in life. You need something magnificent, something majestic, something that is, you know, that it, you know, gives that passion. That I think that's what life's all about. Sometimes you do need something that is remarkable, and, you know, that funeral certainly was remarkable in my view.
I understand there has not been a date set yet for the coronation of King Charles III. Do you know if there has been a date? And
I've not heard that there has been. No.
Do you think there'll be anything close to the same kind of media attention?
I mean, it won't be as drawn out as the build up to the funeral was, but I still think it will be huge. Yes, I really do, because I think there's a knock-on effect, and also, you know, this has been something that Charles has waited his whole life for.
70 years.
Yeah, and it must be quite. I mean, I looked at that man and I thought, I felt some, aside from the personal loss that he suffered. Can you imagine having to perform all the from the speeches to, you know, everywhere he had to appear before that funeral? He's a 73-year-old man. That must be exhausting. Aside from the emotion of losing his mother, to, you know, he just looks a little bit broken. I did feel quite sorry for him. You know, some of the sights aside from, just the pure emotion, he just looked exhausted to me. And I don't know what sort of break or holiday he'll get before the coronation, but I imagine he might need a little bit of time to recharge. It must be draining to have to go through. I mean, look, any loss in your own family is obviously hugely emotional and takes its toll. But can you imagine doing that on a global scale, in front of the world? We can't imagine it, can we? And I guess they're trained for it. Their whole life is built up to this. They're used to that. Everywhere they go, every eyeball is focused on them. But it's still, I can't imagine anything prepared him quite for that day and the build up to that day that Charles and the rest of the family went through as well, but particularly Charles, William, Harry, their partners, their wives, their kids. I don't think any normal member of the public can even get a handle on what they've been through.
Well, I think it was Prince Harry that was quoted as saying that walking behind his mother's casket was quite traumatic to him at that young age.
Yeah,
I was surprised, but also impressed that they brought out a future king, George, at 6 years old or something like that, to not walk behind the casket, thankfully, but be in a car behind the casket and participate in 2 funerals.
It almost feels to me like their whole life is. The focus really is all about that training for what is eventually going to happen to them, and it feels that I'm not sure I agree with what William and Harry had to do for their own mother. I don't know. I guess they couldn't win if they didn't walk behind. They'd be criticised if they did. I guess the Queen's stoicism of don't complain, just carry on and do your duty is sort of being passed on to the younger generation, really. And I think that's what is so, and I saw that in Vern Stokes, you just get on with your job. You don't moan. And I think there's so many people who make excuses these days. Whoever's fault, the government's fault, the world's fault, their own parents' fault. I think it showed to me how that just keep calm and carry on, do what you have to do, as the Queen typified for me. Whether Charles has that, we're yet to see as king, but I think he will. I think he's admired. He's faced a lot of criticism in his life, as they all have. Not many people have spoken out like Harry has, for example. He's faced some criticism for that, Harry particularly, and hence moved to the States to get away from it. But I think that funeral showed how this country really wants to embrace him again, really, if they can. If he just kind of opens up a bit and maybe finds that balance to actually come back into the fold, I think he'd be welcomed back with open arms. But yeah, I just admire what they had to do to face the world, in that personal mourning of their own grandmother.
Stefan Boyle, obviously you've had a huge impact if you're at 1.35 views of your tribute to this garrison soldier who organized the event. If people want to contact you from a marketing standpoint or just follow you, what's the best way to contact you? Is it through LinkedIn or what? I
always think LinkedIn is a go-to platform, really. Everyone is on it. If you're in business, you're not on LinkedIn, what are you doing? I think it's the main place. If people want to find me, contact me, message me, connect with me, follow me. Yeah, it'd be great to see people on LinkedIn. I'd be delighted.
We're going to take a break for 2 minutes for some messages and be back again with Stefan Boyle about the Queen's funeral and a post that he put on LinkedIn that's got over 1.35 million views and a whole bunch of reactions, including mine, where I reached out to Stefan to say, this was really an interesting comment you made about this guy, this one soldier who walked down the mall by himself in the middle of everything just before the funeral was about to start, just before the procession was just about to start. And it appears that he organized, a couple thousand military personnel in that event. It was pretty impressive. Stay with us. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Stefan Boyle. He is a marketing consultant expert, lead generation expert in London, England. Just outside of London is where he is today. And he posted on LinkedIn really a blog. It was more than a post about a gentleman that was an unsung hero of the Queen's funeral on Monday. His job was to organize all the military groups. I don't know even what you call them, but the bands and the different forces that were part of the military processions on Monday, both, I guess, before and after the funeral. And you talked about how it's a great example of how one individual, one man, one soldier, one organizer can have a huge impact, and that it was showing the best of British, of UK. It was interesting. You made a couple of other comments in your post, though, as well. You derided some people that might think about republicanism. You've talked about Harry and Meghan going to the States. You're undoubtedly familiar with the way that the system in the United States works, is that they elect on a every 4-year basis their head of state, while you've had the Queen of England, the Queen of the Commonwealth, as your head of state for the last 7 years, as I have as Queen of Canada. Tell me, why do you think constitutional monarchy is superior to a Republican form of government?
I think it comes down to me. I mean, look, I'm not obsessed with the royal family or anything like that. I admire them. I think it came down to pure leadership. That one constant head of state, if you like, with, look, none of us really know what real power, what goes on behind the scenes, but from a representative point of view, she was that constant. She had 15 prime ministers, from Winston Churchill through to our current one, who most people in the global population haven't heard of, Liz Truss. But before that, probably Boris Johnson was a much bigger personality. Liz Truss is still new to being PM.
Oh, she got to read a scripture reading to a couple billion people on Monday.
That probably would have helped raise her profile somewhat, yes. And I think for me, I felt this personally, but I've seen it as well, a real disillusionment with politicians. It's just how they chop and change. There's a mistrust, I believe, in the political systems in so many places. It doesn't matter which way your political persuasion is, but I just think there is a huge distrust. And I think for me, that's been emphasised with the pandemic and the lockdowns, and now this cost of living crisis that we're facing, particularly in the UK, but in other parts of the world, I believe, as well. Whereas someone like the Queen or the King now has got that constant ability to lead, even in a very quiet, subtle way, without coming up with policies that seem to be people-pleasing things they want to, they think they want to say that will grab votes, grab policy, or make them popular. I don't think there's many politicians who are very forthright in their principles these days. I believe that people want to please everybody, and as I said in my post, end up pleasing nobody at all. Where the Queen wasn't going out to try and please anyone. She was just doing her job, going out, representing the country on a global stage, as well as on a very local level with, for example, maybe visiting a school in Windsor, as a silly example. Everyone wanted to see her, and it wasn't with any agenda. It was just because she was loved and admired. And that isn't there with politicians. I don't think there's many politicians who gain that respect, gain that love, apart from obviously real advocates, maybe in a political party, but there seems to be an agenda all the time. The Queen didn't have that. And I think that's what, for me, just enabled us to have someone that you could look up to.
So
and I think you don't always appreciate that, like anything in life, until it's taken away from you.
Oh.
Now we've got a new situation with Charles, where I think we're all hoping that he can live up to that, but obviously that is yet to be seen. I believe personally that he will. I think he's done a lot of good. He's been derided over the years for lots of things, but I think he's gained his respect in his later years, of our country, and hopefully across the Commonwealth and across the world as well. But I think he's just that figurehead that represents Britain and the Commonwealth, and I think that's a lot to be said for that. And it's a constant that we've all had. We've had the Queen our whole life for the vast majority of the population. She's just been there, just hardly putting a foot wrong throughout her whole reign, and I think people admire that.
Some people that talked about wouldn't consider a republicanism movement while she was still alive. Do you think, given her death and the new reign of King Charles III, that there may be new calls for a different style of government, either in the UK or, frankly, in some members of the Commonwealth?
I mean, I think what's strange is people kind of seem to think that it's like Henry VIII who sat on his throne, ordering his subjects around. And I don't think, obviously, the Queen has a week, or the King has a weekly meeting with the Prime Minister, where appropriate, while Parliament's in session. But what influence they have, as I said, we will probably never know. But I think it's just a figurehead, really, that I think that it represents, really. So whether Charles can live up to that, as I said, we've yet to be seen. But I hope he will. There's people who want change are often the noisier. The people who make more vocal, could be on social media, whatever platform you're on. The people who want something more drastic tend to be heard more because it's more radical.
Yeah.
If you're just happy with the status quo, you're less likely to shout about that all the time. If you want revolution and republicanism, I guess there's more people. A small number of people can make a lot of noise. I don't think it will happen. Not in my lifetime. I may be wrong. How popular Charles is? Lots of people have said over the since the Queen has become more elderly, they thought it would skip a generation and go more, towards William, who is deemed to be younger, more popular with the public. But I don't think that will happen. I think Charles will make a difference, but I may be wrong.
I interviewed a former member of the armed services in the UK on Monday, and he was saying there is a material difference between pledging allegiance, loyalty to the monarch, an individual personified in Queen Elizabeth historically, versus to a constitution or a piece of paper or a flag, as you would in the United States or in a Republican form of government. Do you think that's true? Do you think that having the country and the pledges of allegiance and loyalty to an individual, the Queen, the King, is and personifying it really does have a materially better impact on how people want to fight or how people want to live out their obligations, etc.?
Well, I think people probably underestimate, because it's the norm, the impact of the monarchy. You think every stamp, every banknote, every time someone stands up in a court of law, every law that's passed, every session of Parliament is all, stems down from that monarch. And I think because we're so used to it, we don't notice that. But I think having that figurehead, if you're in the armed services, for example, I think that means more. You can relate more to another human that you respect and love and look up to. Don't get me wrong. I think, you could be proud of your flag and your nation. If you're in the US Army, for example, I'm sure they're proud of that, and they lay down their life for that their country. But I think we all relate more to a human being than I think we do just a flag or just a name of a nation. I think, but look, I've not served my country in the military. I don't know, but that's my gut feel.
Your last Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, didn't want to leave his post and fought it almost every step of the way. But I can't imagine January the 6th, the insurrection in the United States, occurring in the UK. Can you?
No, I can't really. No, I think I'm sure Boris is most regretful of the position he's now in. I think he's probably felt like he has unfinished business. I feel like he probably felt he wanted to serve more, and probably from an egotistical point of view, I'm sure he wanted to stand up and speak in Westminster Abbey instead of Liz Truss. He probably felt he wanted to have his piece, and I think he probably have an impact. That's one thing he is very, very good at, and probably maybe what he says is debatable, but he has an impact as a public speaker for sure. But I think he was, whether you like him or not, I think it's hard to argue that he probably wasn't proud of his country, proud of his position he served. Unfortunately, I think Boris has a lot of fluff and waffle that probably was his downfall in the end. I think, rather than being more forthright with his true opinions, I think he made lots of mistakes and lost respect of his political party as well as a lot of the country.
Right. The comment you made about political correctness or lack of political correctness and lack of wokeness, I was wondering about, because the protocol there was pretty unbelievable. As you may know, there were 6 Canadian prime ministers, current and former, in presence, several different governor generals. There was only one president of the United States. I think there were several members of different denominations, Christian denominations, that actually spoke at the funeral. It was interesting that they were all Christian, the Catholics, and I think it was a Pentecostal and someone else that spoke, and yet no one from Judaism or Islam spoke. And there were speakers from, I believe, Scotland and Wales as well. And so, while there may not have been political correctness, there was certainly protocol.
But I think that typifies the monarchy. There is tradition that goes back hundreds of years that was adhered to, as I said, and I didn't see anyone, I've not seen any dissent towards that. That's what I noticed, that your exact comment there. It's like, wow, it's amazing actually, where there's this political correctness where people are scared of upsetting, anyone these days. But at the funeral, that was almost ignored, but people weren't upset by it. And I think that says an awful lot, really. And there's a huge lesson in that, where that doesn't mean you disrespect other religions or nations or whatever. But if you just, you are what you are, there's nothing wrong with that. It's, just being yourself, or, whether that's an individual, a political party, a head of state, be genuine, be authentic. And that's why I think, as I said, Boris Johnson wasn't. He felt that he was disingenuous and would, not really be honest. And I think it shows that there is a real trend. And I think that highlighted to, you get a lot more respect if you are honest, you are authentic, whether that's in marketing, in business, in religion, in leadership, in the monarchy. I think you are what you are, and you can't be something else. And if you try to be, it's not respected in the same way. It doesn't mean you don't embrace other nations, other religions, or anything else. But I think there's too much, in my view. I'm not a fan of political correctness, wokeness, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a lot more. If you're straight, you're authentic and honest, at least people know where they stand. And I don't think there's enough of that in the world these days. Well,
Stefan Boyle, a marketer from the UK, I think that your post was authentic because you were praising one individual, an unsung hero, someone that was standing out in one screenshot that you took of them as they were doing the final inspection, but you were praising them for the work that they did day in and day out, and obviously having an incredible special impact on the Queen's funeral. And so I thought your post was authentic, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's gotten 1,000,035 views. So I appreciate you posting it, and appreciate you joining us today and telling us a little bit about why you posted it and about the individual. I think it's really important to acknowledge some of these unsung heroes that contribute to our society. So I appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure, Brian. Pleasure.
We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments about my views of what was happening on Monday after this message. And thank you again to Stefan Boyle, marketer from the UK, who you can find on LinkedIn. If you're doing any lead generation in the UK, sounds to me like Stefan Boyle is the guy to contact. Stay with us, everybody.